Welcome back. There you have it, your political roundup. Let's get into the conversation now. The appointments, the firing, the hiring. Let's talk to someone who's followed these activities. Mr. GT Ogunye joins us from our Lagos studio. He's a lawyer and a public affairs analyst. Mr. Ogunye, welcome to Politics Today.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, I'm trying to read your mood because I'm sure, like everyone else, you looked forward to this reshuffling. But let me get your thoughts on what you think about it generally, because there were high expectations. Does this meet the anticipation that was in the air in the last couple of weeks with regard to the appointments made by the president and those he's had to let go now?
Well, thanks again. In the presidential system of government, the chief executive of the federation of a country is the president, because we have an executive president in Nigeria. And the constitution provides that in the discharge of his executive powers, he may appoint ministers subject to the provisions of the Constitution, particularly on the issue of federal character and spread. And so undoubtedly, therefore, the president has the prerogative to appoint ministers and remove them as he may wish. In other words, ministers serve at the pleasure of the president. However, it must be stated that if a president has a 4-year term or tenure, and very early into that tenure, there are suggestions or clamor or a realization by the president himself that he needs to remove some ministers or aides, stating reasons or not stating any reason at all. That presupposes that those who are appointed by that president perhaps were not fit for purpose. And since ultimately the president is the one that holds the mandate in his hand and will be judged, his performance will be judged not only by his own actions and acts and performance in government, but also by the performance of his minister and aides. Ultimately, he bears responsibility. He said that the buck stopped on his table. And for this reshuffle, it's been in the air for a long time. There's been speculation around it. Some aides of the president had given the hint by giving information that the president will do some reshuffle at a particular point. My take on this reshuffle is that the president that knows the person is appointed, hopefully, and we hope that these ones that have been appointed, who will be sworn in, some of them will be sworn in, will justify the reason for appointing them. If the reason for appointing them or making them to come on board or reshuffle them was that the president was dissatisfied with those who were there before.
Go back and forth and talk about who deserved to be fired, who doesn't deserve to be fired. But let's look at some critical aspects of this reshuffle. One of it is the Livestock Ministry, which has now come on board. The president believes that this will address perhaps the farmers-herders clashes. Do you want to speak to that?
Quite frankly, when that idea was mooted by the president and there was a discussion around it, there was a committee that was set up, and it was touted as a good move that will ultimately and finally, hopefully, resolve the farmers' herders clashes. I was a little bit uninterested in that. Why? Because You know, there is an agitation in the country for a leaner, a smaller government that is efficient. I understand that the name of the game is politics. If you have a government, politics will play a role in constituting that government. So there's always an inclination to pay IOU, to fulfill promises, to those who are angling for appointment. But in this country now for some years, since the Oronosai Committee report, and even before then, there had been an agitation that government should be leaner so that it can be more effective to cut waste and excesses. I mean, that government has no business creating sinecures for people who just want to be in government. And so if you have a ministry of agriculture, there might even be a minister of state for agriculture, I don't know. And then on top of that, you are creating a special ministry for livestock development. And I don't want this to be taken as a cultural position or a sectional position. The question is, are you creating a special ministry for piggery? Are you creating for fishes? You call it piscatorial ministry, and so on and so forth. What's that ministry going to do? You want to create a ministry for livestock development. I think that if you want to specifically focus on livestock development in Nigeria, there could be an arm of that same Ministry of Agriculture focusing on livestock development. In Western Nigeria, for example, in the First Republic, there was a company, a corporation that was created by Yoruba Awolowo's government for livestock development. And so ranches were created in Western region. And so some cows were imported from Brazil, from Argentina, beautiful, not with threatening horns, and they were put in those ranches. Successive governments and administration, of course, depleted the stock, through party with those cows and cattle, and then the whole ranches were ransacked, and now they became empty. So yes, a government can encourage that, even at the federal level, but bearing in mind that under the Land Use Act, lands belong to the state government, and that it is at that level that livestock development ought to be encouraged. I wonder what a Ministry of Livestock Development at the center will be doing, even when questions have been posed about whether you should indeed have a Ministry of Agriculture, at the federal level, bearing in mind that the federal government only has Abuja as its territory. All the other territories in Nigeria belong to the states, where the action should be happening. And if you look at the Land Use Act, you see a special provision where land could be allocated for livestock development, at the local government level, 20 hectares, per 20 acres per 20 hectares, if I'm not mistaken. So, but then it is the policy of government. We'll see how it will pan out, and we'll see what's going to happen to it.
Something else you talked about was these appointments were supposed to portray cost cutting, talk about a leaner government. We also talk about the Orosanye report. I don't know if these appointments in any way reflect the Orosanye report. And also, perhaps you could talk about the agitations on whether or not we need ministers of state when we talk about cutting down the cost of government, because we see new appointments for ministers of state.
My short answer to that is that what has happened has not addressed the issue of conserving funds and cutting down the cost of government, or making government more efficient, more nimble, and more productive, if you ask me, so that it will not promote emotion. Appointment will not promote emotion, a notion that you want job for the boys and for the big girls. So from what we've read thus far, 5 ministers were sacked, 7 were appointed. So the number has not gone down. And so the agencies and ministries are still there, and departments of government. And there are so many, and there's not been any serious attempt to rationalize or, merge them. It is, when election is coming, politicians throw up a lot of promises. But as we've learned over the years, it's easier said than done. Managing the size of government is an ideal that we have to consciously realize. Particularly because government tells Nigerians every day that the resources are not there. Okay? And so what is the point in making government top heavy? We're not talking about recruiting more soldiers. We're not talking about bolstering up the strength of the police, because, we've not even reached the UN standard. There's so many things to be done. Employment, unemployment in the country is skyrocketing, and so on and so forth. With government perennially telling Nigerians that, government is not a creator of jobs. So government should just create an enabling environment. Government should promote entrepreneurship, as if all those funny talks about how to make wealth and create entrepreneurs will be what will help our country, in the final analysis, to be an industrialized country. I mean, if everybody is becoming an entrepreneur, everybody, two persons are setting up businesses to do what? To offer services and to sell and buy. They're not talking about creating industry and so on and so forth. All these funny concepts, that they bring from the West, from Bretton Woods institutions, on how to create wealth, on how to alleviate poverty, on how they are funny concepts. But some attempt is not being made to deconstruct them, because they've stayed with us for some time now, and they're becoming accepted by everybody. I mean, even the language we speak, we talk about. If you go to any channels now, any television, and they are talking about the economy, they talk about markets. If people are investing, they say the foreign investors are coming to the Nigerian market. So we are a market. We are not a factory.
Mr. Oguye, let's stay with the context of these appointments. And we were talking about cutting down the costs of governance, and we talked about the Orosanye report. One of the things the Orosanye report talked about was merging agencies of government. About 220 of the 541 government agencies should be merged. Can we truly talk about cutting down the cost of governance if we focus on the number of ministers that we have or do not have, and ignore the redundancy or inefficiency in the civil service with regard to these numbers of agencies of government?
Yeah, we can talk about that, but we must address that issue of cost of government from two angles. We have multiplicity of agencies, we have replication of institutions, even the anti-corruption agencies now, this has been on for some time, which make the cost of government to bludgeon. That's one level. The other level, or the other angle, is the cost of government arising from corrupt practices and mismanagement of resources. The perquisites of office, which, become something so problematic in the face of crying and grinding poverty in the country. Okay, so those are the two sources of that are driving cost of government in Nigeria. People may not look at it that way, just say, okay, cost of government. What's the cost of government? The money that ministers are receiving, the agencies that we have, and all. That's just one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is what I've just pointed out, the cost of corruption in the country. And I think that moving forward, government should consciously deal with that. My position, and I've made this position clear on many occasions, democratic actors should not be the grave diggers of the democratic process. Indicators worldwide show that democracy or civil government only becomes secure when the business of development is attended to by democratic actors. What are we seeing now? Just spontaneously, openly, some errant persons will see military vehicles passing and they start shouting, "We want you back." Do they know what they're talking about? Do they know what the people of this country went through? And young people, maybe 25, 30 years, never knew what the military government represented at the time. So they've just heard about it. And so that's how dangerous and perilous it can be when democracy is not yielding development. It's a very serious matter. And so
all right, Mr.
those who are in government,
when we talk about this development,
those who are in government should take it and just do the business of government in an efficient manner and in a manner that the people will know that okay, the belt is being tightened all around, not in one section of the population.
Okay, beautiful. Let me take it off from there, because at the time of the initial appointments by the president, the concerns around round pegs and square holes came up, and now we find that the president has done appointments or reshuffled his cabinet to the point where he's moved some persons who have been in certain areas to another area. You find the Minister of Health moved to Education. You find the Minister of Sports moved to Trade and Investment. You find the Minister of State for Education at the time, who was a doctor, and the questions around his position at the time. But now he's now moved to Minister of State for Humanitarian Affairs. What do you make of this reshuffling when we talk about getting it right? Because the president has fired based on the fact that he's not satisfied with the performances of those whom he just fired.
It's best for those who have expertise and specialization in certain areas to superintend those areas, because it brings about efficiency, and they will not be lied to, or it will be less difficult or more difficult rather to lie to them by bureaucrats and civil servants that some people have called evil servants and all that. So they hit the ground running once they are there, round peg in round holes. But it's generally believed that ministers can serve anywhere. We've had a lawyer, a senior lawyer, becoming a minister of works in Nigeria, becoming a minister of energy in Nigeria, and so on and so forth. So it is believed that minister can serve anywhere. And those ministers, anyway, will not reject such appointments. They will say, no, this is not what I'm looking for. This is not where I will optimize my contribution. No, because people just want to get appointments, and people lobby for these appointments. So it is rare to see people say, but I'm not an agronomist. I'm not an agricultural expert. I've not done anything like this before. So why do you want me to be a minister of agriculture? Or I'm not an educationist. So why do you want me to be here? And so on and so forth. But as I said, generally believe that ministers can, people would many disciplines can serve, across the areas where those disciplines are required, and that will not be a problem for politicians. They claim that they are the political heads, and that the experts, the bureaucrats, are the people in the ministry, and that they will do the job anyway. So that's the notion that, but as I said, it's better to get those who know about the ministry they are superintending to be put there. But that has not been our experience, not only now, but even before now.
Let me get your thoughts on what you think about scrapping the Niger Delta Affairs Ministry and replacing it with a regional ministry because of the development commissions that have been created. Now, most of these development commissions have been criticized as unnecessary, but some argue that for development to occur, that it is necessary to have these development commissions. There are some regions that don't have their commissions yet, still in the works. But what do you think about a regional ministry to address development commissions, bearing in mind that the Establishing Act of these commissions designates them in the presidency initially?
You know, over time, the issue of having regional or zonal development commission has been politicized. I thought that the Niger Delta Development Commission was created specifically to deal with the problem of that region. But politicians, be whom they are, you know, have come forward to say that every zone has its own peculiar problem. And so this has been replicated now entirely across those zones. So I think that it's a smart move, therefore, for the president to streamline, have one ministry, and then have these commissions that now are entirely in the 6 geopolitical zones to serve in that under that ministry. I think that that's some good thinking, if you ask me, because I saw it and I felt that, oh, this one is perhaps, you know, a solid thing to do, you know, at this point in time.
Are you surprised with the appointments in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs? I ask that because there have been those who have said that we don't need a Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. In fact, I recall that Chief Bode George described it as a iffy ministry. There are headlines that describe it as a corruption-laden ministry, but now we have 2 ministers overseeing that ministry. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, in Nigeria, we started with 3 regions. Then we became 4 regions. Then we became 12 states, 19, 30 states, then 36 states. States have been atomized in Nigeria. In the same fashion, ministries, departments are being atomized and replicated. I've talked about this before. You know, government had, they call it poverty alleviation program, intervention programs. Some of the programs are funded by development partners and lenders and, you know, Western countries who claim that they are giving handouts to poor nations, according to them. And so this money will come in some locally sourced, domestically, you know, sourced, and they are spent on these programs. So in the past administration had a Sure P program. Another one will come with another program. So eventually, under, you know, the past administration of Muhammadu Buhari, we now have this Ministry of Humanitarian, and it became a center for sleaze. So much so that the EFCC, you know, started investigating it, the Department of Government, before matters came to a head with the Shiloh testimony giver, you know. And so I don't know what the thinking in government is if that ministry had been run in such a manner that is now regarded as a criminal enterprise. If that notion is being, you know, entrenched, what is the assurance that those who may be appointed to superintendent, whether they be 2 or 3 or 1, will also not, you know, remember, at the very least, remember what was going on there before. Such interventions can be done under substantive ministries. That's the point I'm making. But, you know, more and more people, more and more interest coalesce in forming government, and everybody just wants a piece of the pie. Everybody wants a position. Everybody wants something. And so politicians will say that we are in this just to get you elected, and then we won't have anything. What are we going to have? So we need to recalibrate our thinking. We need to prioritize service. We even need to make government not so lucrative as to attract people that think that government is business and that it is a place to make money. In the past in this country, even in the legislature, headmasters, school principals were the one going to parliament in Western region, in all the parts of this country. So the question of having a permanent bureaucracy under a presidential system of government, you have legislators there, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. And I think that we need to learn a lot. Look, I give this example. Each time I look at the British system and I see that iconic number 10 Downing Street, where the Prime Minister of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom, will just leave his home and then go to the road. Mentally, I then compare it with our own Aso Rock. And all the things we do in our various houses of assembly, in our various government houses, the waste. I mean,
we're almost out of time, but I just want to ask you this question. With regard to, I recall the agitations before the president eventually appointed a minister of youth, and now the minister of youth has been fired. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, he who hires has the right to fire. I don't know the reason why that minister has been fired, but
perhaps public
president has his own metrics. The president has his own has his ways of measuring performance. I know that the lady Adiza, was the one going around the ministry and assessing their performance. Maybe there's a report of performance at the level of each ministry, and the president feels that some of them, have not discharged their responsibility creditably well, and that therefore he has to remove them. There are some of the ministers. Yes.
Mr. Oguye, I was going to say thank you very much for your time because we've run out of time.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.